Ambassador Velkrin sat in his immaculate office, all four hands trembling slightly as he stared at the object on his desk. His chitinous exoskeleton clicked softly with each nervous twitch, a sound that would have been imperceptible to most species but was deafening to his own sensory organs. 20 years. 20 years he had kept this cursed thing locked away in the back of his personal vault, hoping he would never be desperate enough to use it. And yet, here he was, mandibles chattering with anxiety, about to commit what he could only describe as an act of controlled insanity. The favor token looked utterly ridiculous. A primitive chunk of metal, roughly stamped with human letters and numbers, attached to a worn titanium chain. It had all the technological sophistication of a rock. Which, coming from humans, was somehow both surprising and entirely predictable. "This is what my life has come to," Velkrin muttered to himself, his translator converting his chittering into sardonic galactic standard. Calling in a favor from a species that thinks measured response is a suggestion, not a requirement. He had saved exactly one human from a derelict cargo ship 2 decades ago. One. And that human, in typical overdramatic fashion, had insisted Velkrin take this token with the solemnity of someone handing over a royal decree. Now, with his entire world on the line, he was actually going to use it. The galaxy help him. The memory was unfortunately vivid. Velkrin had been conducting a routine patrol near the Kelthera Nebula when his sensors picked up a distress beacon from a cargo hauler that looked like it had lost an argument with an asteroid field. And the asteroid field had brought friends. Marcus Chen had been the only living soul aboard, half-conscious and babbling about oxygen recyclers and how he really should have paid for the extended warranty. Velkrin had simply done what any reasonable being would do, extracted the human, stabilized him, and dropped him off at the nearest station. 10 minutes of work, tops. Barely worth mentioning in his weekly reports, but Marcus, oh Marcus, had treated it like Velkrin had personally wrestled a supernova into submission on his behalf. "You saved my life, man." Marcus had insisted, eyes glistening with that disturbing excess of moisture humans called getting emotional. He had pressed the favor token into Velkrin's primary hand with the gravity of a religious ceremony. "This is a life debt. You ever need anything at all, you call me. We humans, we don't forget this stuff." Velkrin had tried to refuse. It was nothing, truly. Standard protocol, really. Nope. Not how we work. You're stuck with it now, buddy. Stuck with it. As if gratitude were some kind of cosmic parasitic infection. Velkrin had accepted the token just to end the conversation, filed it away, and assumed that would be the end of humanity's theatrics in his life. How magnificently, catastrophically wrong he had been. Now, staring at that same token 20 years later, with his colony world facing extinction and every legitimate avenue of help completely exhausted, Velkrin realized something deeply unsettling, that he was about to find out exactly what human gratitude looked like when fully mobilized. His office suddenly felt far too cold. The Draxan Collective had found iridium deposits beneath Velkrin's colony world. Massive ones. The kind that made corporate executives salivate and ethics departments suddenly develop convenient cases of selective blindness. They had a legal claim too. Some obscure treaty from 2 centuries ago, back when the Galactic Council was still pretending to care about equitable resource distribution. The paperwork was airtight, reviewed by the best legal minds money could buy, which was considerable given that Draxan had more credits than some planetary governments. 40 million people. 30 days to evacuate. Where were they supposed to go? The Galactic Council's response had been a masterclass in bureaucratic indifference. "We sympathize with your situation, Ambassador, but the law is quite clear," they had said, as if laws were forces of nature rather than things written by beings who could be bribed, threatened, or simply owned outright. Velkrin had tried everything. Legal challenges that went nowhere. Appeals to galactic humanitarian standards that were politely acknowledged and promptly ignored. He had even attempted to negotiate with Draxan's CEO, a slug-like Morton named Grelthax, whose response had been to laugh. Actually laugh. The sound still haunted Velkrin's dreams. Every door had closed. Every ally had offered sympathy and nothing else. The galaxy, it turned out, ran on profit margins, not principles, which left Velcrin with exactly one option. An option he had sworn he would never use. An option that terrified him almost as much as the thought of watching 40 million of his people become refugees. That he picked up the favor token, its weight somehow heavier than physics should allow, time to call a human. The activation mechanism was, predictably, absurdly primitive. Velcrin had to manually input a COM code etched into the token's surface into his communication array. No quantum encryption, no subspace relay protocols, just a direct line that probably violated a dozen modern communication standards. That he expected a disconnected signal. Or perhaps a polite message explaining that Marcus had moved on with his life, that 20 years was too long, that the favor had expired like unrefrigerated dairy products. Marcus answered before the first chime completed. Velcrin? The human's face filled the screen, older now, with more lines around the eyes, but wearing an expression of such unbridled eagerness that Velcrin's antennae flattened instinctively against his head. Are you actually calling in the favor? Yes, but perhaps this was a mistake and I should not burden you with, oh buddy. Oh my friend. You have no idea what you just started. Marcus was grinning. Actually grinning. This was supposed to be a serious moment, a desperate plea for help, and the human looked like he had just won some kind of prize. It is a complicated political situation involving corporate mining rights and, don't care. You saved my life. Give me the details in a data packet. I'm making some calls. Calls? Velcrin's voice climbed several octaves. What kind of calls? The kind where I tell people that someone called in a human life debt. Trust me, you're going to have more help than you know what to do with. Sending you my arrival coordinates now. See you in 48 hours. The connection terminated. Velcrin stared at the blank screen, a growing sense of dread coiling in his thorax. What, exactly, had he just unleashed? The news spread through the galaxy's communication networks with the speed and intensity of a neutron star collapse. Within 6 hours, every major news outlet, gossip channel, and diplomatic backchannel was buzzing with the same information. Humanity owed someone a favor, and they were calling it in. The reactions were, to put it mildly, mixed. The Clarion ambassador sent Velcrin a condolence message. An actual condolence message, as if someone had died. Our thoughts are with you during this difficult time, it read. Velcrin was still alive. His people were still alive. Why was he receiving condolences? On the Galactic forum, a Zenthari military commander posted a warning that went viral within minutes, asked humans for help with a small pirate problem in our outer colonies. They sent 3 battle fleets, 40,000 marines, and a military marching band. The pirates surrendered immediately. Then the humans stayed for 2 months throwing parties and teaching our children something called barbecue techniques. We still haven't recovered. Good luck, Velcrin. A Quellan infrastructure minister added their own horror story, requested human assistance building a orbital station. They built 6. On the wrong planet. When we pointed this out, they said, well, we're already here, and terraformed it anyway. It is now more habitable than our actual homeworld. We are still receiving invoices for supplies we did not request. Meanwhile, Draxon's CEO Grelthax released a statement dripping with arrogance. The Draxon Collective is unconcerned with theatrical gestures from primitive species. Our legal claim is ironclad, and no amount of human posturing will change established galactic law. The statement was accompanied by a laugh that his PR team probably should have edited out. On the betting networks, odds were already being calculated. The over-under on how many days until Draxon folded completely was set at 11. The odds on whether humans would stop at just solving the problem or would somehow make it exponentially larger stood at 3-1 in favor of exponential expansion. One commentator on the Galactic News Network summed it up perfectly: humans have many wonderful qualities. Proportional response is not one of them. I suspect we are about to be reminded why. Velcrin watched all of this unfold from his office, his sense of impending chaos growing with each passing hour. The first ship arrived 36 hours after Velcrin's call. Then another. Then 15 more. Then they stopped being countable as individual vessels and started becoming what could only be described as a fleet, but these were not warships. Velkrin had expected warships, maybe some of those terrifying human marines he had heard about. Instead, he was looking at civilian transports, data freighters, and what appeared to be a vessel whose hull markings identified it as belonging to an accounting firm. An accounting firm had faster-than-light capability. Humans gave their accountants interstellar ships. Velkrin was not sure what disturbed him more, that this was necessary, or that it made a certain twisted sense. The vessels disgorged their passengers in waves. Lawyers in crisp suits, carrying data tablets that probably contained more legal precedents than the Galactic Council's entire archive. Accountants with the dead-eyed stare of people who considered tax codes recreational reading. PR specialists who moved with the predatory grace of apex hunters. And, most worryingly, several groups of humans who were introduced as information technology specialists, but had the unmistakable air of people who knew exactly 17 ways to make a computer system regret its existence. Marcus arrived personally, of course, striding into Velkrin's office with a team of 20 humans trailing behind him like a tactical squadron. "Marcus, I appreciate the support, but I was expecting perhaps some diplomatic assistance, maybe a strongly worded statement to the council." "Oh, we're way past strongly worded statements, my friend." Marcus was practically vibrating with enthusiasm. "We're going to handle this the human way. Aggressively legal." Aggressively legal? That is not a recognized legal category. It is now. One of the lawyers, a woman named Patricia Rodriguez, stepped forward and dropped a data pad on Velkrin's desk with a heavy thunk. 72 hours of research. We found 847 violations in Draxon's claim. Mining rights improperly filed. Environmental impact studies falsified. Bribery of council members that they did not properly disclose. Another human, introduced as Trevor from Special Investigations, added casually, "Also, the CEO's third cousin committed tax evasion 15 years ago in the Outer Rim." We tracked the credits. They flow back to Grelthax's personal accounts. How is his cousin's tax evasion relevant to? Everything is relevant if you look hard enough, Trevor said with a smile that could have frozen helium. Velkrin stared at the assembled humans. They had been working for 3 days. 3 days. And they had apparently torn apart Draxon's entire corporate structure, dug through decades of financial records, and somehow connected tax evasion from a relative to the CEO's current operations. "This seems excessive," Velkrin managed weakly. "You saved one of ours," Marcus said simply. "There's no such thing as excessive." Velkrin was beginning to understand why the Galactic Council looked nervous whenever humans used the word help. What happened next could only be described as systematic corporate annihilation performed with the precision of a surgical strike and the subtlety of a supernova. The legal team struck first. At precisely 0800 Galactic Standard Time, they filed 3,000 motions simultaneously across 40 different jurisdictions. Not 300. 3,000. The Galactic court system, which had been comfortably processing maybe a dozen cases per day, suddenly found itself drowning in perfectly formatted, meticulously researched legal challenges that all pointed to one conclusion: Draxon's claim was built on a foundation of fraud, corruption, and paperwork so shoddy it was insulting to actual criminals. While lawyers clogged every legal artery in the galaxy, the PR team went to work. And this, Velkrin realized, was where humans truly became terrifying. They did not lie. They did not need to. Documents began leaking to every major news outlet. Environmental disasters Draxon had covered up. Worker safety violations that had resulted in deaths the company had paid to keep quiet. Bribery schemes so extensive they had their own organizational charts. Every piece of information was verified, sourced, and presented with the kind of factual clarity that made denial impossible. "We prefer the truth," explained Jennifer Kim, head of the PR division, with a smile that could have cut through battleship armor. "Lies can be disputed. Facts are just devastating." The stock market responded predictably. Draxon's share price did not fall so much as it achieved a new form of freefall previously thought impossible by economic physicists. Investors abandoned the company like it had become radioactive. Which, given some of the environmental violations now coming to light, was not entirely metaphorical, the economic warfare team, because apparently humans had enough economists willing to do this kind of work that they could field a team, organized a boycott. Not a small, symbolic boycott. A galaxy-spanning coordinated refusal to do business with Draxon that was so effective that within 4 days, shipping companies stopped accepting their contracts, suppliers cancelled orders, and even the company's regular cafeteria vendor refused to deliver coffee. You turned their coffee supplier against them? Velcrin asked, incredulous. Everyone has a breaking point, the economist replied. Theirs was when we showed them the wage theft documents. But the piece de resistance, the touch that elevated this from merely thorough to absolutely unhinged, was the tourists, human tourists, began appearing at every Draxon facility across the galaxy. They were not protesting. They were not vandalizing. They were simply there. Observing. Recording. Taking extensive notes. Asking polite questions about safety protocols. Commenting loudly about how certain structures did not appear to meet updated building codes, all completely legal. All absolutely intimidating. One facility manager filed a complaint that the humans were menacingly complying with all posted regulations. The Galactic police had no idea how to respond to that. Other corporations began distancing themselves from Draxon with the speed of beings fleeing a plague ship. Partnership agreements were quietly dissolved. Joint ventures suddenly remembered prior commitments. The Galactic Business Council removed Draxon from 3 committees in 1 day. Velcrin watched this unfold from his office, cycling through emotions he did not have names for. Horror. Awe. Gratitude. Terror at what he had unleashed. Marcus, he finally managed, this is completely disproportionate to the situation. Marcus looked at him with an expression of genuine confusion. You saved one of us. We take that seriously. Did you think we would do less? I thought you might file a legal challenge, perhaps organize a protest. That's cute. No, when humanity owes a debt, we pay it in full. With interest. Velcrin was starting to understand why his condolence messages were still arriving. 14 days. It took 14 days for a corporate entity that had existed for 3 centuries to collapse so completely that economists would study it for generations as a cautionary tale. Galactic, the CEO who had laughed at the notion of human intervention, requested an emergency meeting with the human delegation. He oozed into the conference room, his slug-like body leaving a trail of what Velcrin hoped was just moisture, and attempted to negotiate. Perhaps we can reach an arrangement, Galactic began, his voice containing none of its earlier arrogance. Draxon is willing to extend the evacuation timeline, maybe offer some relocation assistance. No, Patricia Rodriguez said flatly. No? But surely we can find a middle ground that benefits all parties. You threatened our friends' people. You laughed about it. There is no negotiating. There is only you fixing everything you broke, and then leaving. Trevor leaned forward, his smile never reaching his eyes. We found your personal offshore accounts, by the way. All 47 of them. The Galactic Revenue Service is very interested in those. The negotiation, if it could be called that, lasted 6 minutes. By day 15, Draxon had withdrawn their claim entirely. They sold the mining rights to Velcrin's government for a sum so small it barely covered the paperwork. They also agreed to pay reparations to the colony for distress and disruption, a number that made Velcrin's antennae stand completely upright when he saw it. Galactic stepped down as CEO. Immediately. His resignation statement was 4 sentences long and sounded like it had been written by Patricia's legal team. Because it had been, the company announced it would be changing its name and restructuring its entire corporate philosophy. We believe in thorough solutions, Marcus explained to Velcrin, who was still processing the fact that a galactic megacorporation had essentially ceased to exist because humans had decided it should. Thorough, Velcrin repeated weakly. Yes. That is certainly one word for it. Velcrin's people were not just saved. They were better off than they had been before the crisis. The reparations fund would improve infrastructure for decades. The mining rights now properly belonged to their government. And Draxon's remaining assets in the system had been acquired at prices that could only be described as aggressively discounted. The humans, naturally, through a celebration that could be seen from orbit, Velcrin found Marcus amid the chaos of what humans apparently called a barbecue, though it seemed to involve far more fire and enthusiastic shouting than any cooking method reasonably required. Marcus, I do not have words sufficient to express my gratitude. Stop right there. Marcus held up a hand, grinning. We're even now. You saved my life, I helped save your world. Debt paid. He paused, then reached into his pocket. Unless you want another token? You know, just in case. The spike of pure panic that shot through Velcrin's nervous system could have powered a small city. That will not be necessary, he said quickly. Perhaps too quickly. We are even. Completely even. Absolutely no further favors required or desired. Marcus laughed, but mercifully pocketed whatever he had been reaching for. Across the celebration, Velcrin noticed other alien diplomats taking extensive notes. The Zenthari commander was recording everything. A Quellan economist was creating what appeared to be a detailed flowchart of human favor repayment protocols. A junior Galactic Council member approached Velcrin nervously. Ambassador, what would you say you learned from this experience? Velcrin's mandibles clicked in what might have been a laugh or possibly a minor breakdown. Never underestimate human gratitude. It is less an emotion and more a tactical weapon. Also, if a human ever offers you a favor token, accept it but pray to every deity you know that you never have to use it. Because they might refuse to help? No. Because they absolutely will not. Velcrin's life changed in ways he had not anticipated. He became galactic famous as the guy humanity owed a favor. Diplomats treated him with a mixture of reverence and cautious fear, as if he might accidentally call down human intervention on them next. He never paid for drinks at diplomatic functions anymore. Then again, people also went out of their way to avoid angering him, just in case he had humans on speed dial. The irony was not lost on him. 20 years ago, he had performed a simple rescue and tried to refuse recognition. Now he was possibly the most politically connected individual in his sector, entirely by accident. Human friendship, he reflected, was like antimatter. Incredibly powerful, occasionally useful, but requiring extreme caution in handling and storage. One wrong move and everything within several light-years would be affected. Marcus had tried one more time to give him another favor token before leaving. Velcrin had politely but firmly declined, but he did keep Marcus's contact information, not because he intended to use it, of course. Absolutely not. That would be insane, but it was there. Saved. Encrypted. Accessible, just in case the galaxy ever needed reminding that some debts, when paid by humans, came with interest rates that could reshape civilizations. Velcrin looked at his pristine office, at the data pad containing Marcus's comm code, and clicked his mandibles in what might have been amusement. The galaxy had been warned.